The last transport ship groaned under the weight of 10,000 human souls as it lifted off from Earth's dying surface. Commander Sarah Chen pressed her face against the viewport, watching her homeworld shrink into a pale blue dot. The hegemony's ultimatum had been clear: leave or be exterminated. Humanity had chosen exile. "Ma'am, we're receiving the final transmission from Earth," reported Lieutenant Torres, his voice barely steady. Sarah nodded, though her throat felt tight. The viewscreen flickered to life, showing the familiar face of Director Williams, humanity's last representative on the planet. Behind him, the ruins of New Geneva smoldered under an alien sky. "To all human vessels," Williams began, his weathered face etched with determination, "this is our final message from Earth. The hegemony forces have given us 12 hours to complete evacuation. We estimate 43% of our population has successfully departed." Sarah's hands clenched into fists. 43%. Nearly 3 billion souls left behind because the alien coalition deemed humanity too dangerous to exist among civilized species. The irony wasn't lost on her. Humans had been labeled aggressive and unpredictable by beings who were now forcing them from their birthright at gunpoint. The transport shuddered as they passed through Earth's outer atmosphere. Around them, hundreds of similar vessels fled into the cosmic dark. Civilian ships, military cruisers, research vessels, cargo haulers, anything that could sustain human life had been pressed into service for this desperate exodus. "Where exactly are we supposed to go?" asked Dr. Elena Vasquez, the ship's chief scientist. She floated near the command console, her expression mixing anger with scientific curiosity. "The hegemony has laid claim to every habitable system within 50 light-years. We head for the void sectors," Sarah replied, pulling up the star charts. "Beyond their territory, past the galactic rim, it's mostly empty space, uncharted systems, dead worlds." "That's a death sentence," Torres whispered. Sarah turned to face her crew, seeing the same fear reflected in dozens of faces. These weren't soldiers. Most were civilians, families with children, elderly scientists, artists, and teachers. The military vessels were few and far between, tasked with protecting the larger civilian convoys. "Maybe," she said, her voice carrying across the bridge. "But it's our death sentence to write. The hegemony expects us to die out there in the dark. They're counting on it. They want to solve their human problem without getting their hands dirty." She activated the shipwide communication system. "This is Commander Chen speaking to all souls aboard the New Horizon. I won't lie to you about what we're facing. We're heading into uncharted space with limited resources and no guarantee of finding habitable worlds. The hegemony has made it clear there's no coming back." Silence filled the ship, broken only by the hum of life support systems and the distant crying of children who couldn't understand why they'd left their home. "But here's what they don't understand about humanity," Sarah continued. "We've survived ice ages and plagues. We've crossed oceans in wooden boats and sent ourselves to the stars in metal cans. We've thrived in deserts and tundra, on mountain peaks and ocean depths. They think the void will break us." She paused, looking out at the star field ahead. "They're wrong. We're going to do what humans have always done. We're going to adapt. We're going to survive. And maybe, just maybe, we're going to find something out there that makes us stronger than we ever imagined." The transmission from Earth had ended hours ago, but Sarah kept the channel open, listening to static that might once have carried her grandfather's voice, or the laughter of children playing in Central Park. Now it carried only the silence of a world given over to alien rule. Dr. Vasquez approached her station. "Commander, I've been analyzing our supply situation. With strict rationing, we can sustain the current population for maybe 18 months. That's assuming we find nothing." "And if we do find something?" "That depends entirely on what it is." The convoy consisted of over 800 ships of various sizes, carrying nearly 2 million humans, all that remained of a species that had once numbered in the billions. They'd managed to save some of their greatest treasures, works of art, literature, scientific data, genetic samples, but they'd lost so much more. "Set course for the Kepler void," Sarah ordered. "Maximum sustainable speed. Signal the convoy. We maintain formation until we reach the outer markers." As the New Horizon adjusted its trajectory, Sarah allowed herself one last look at the solar system they were leaving behind. Earth was already invisible, just another point of light in an ocean of stars. Mars, where humanity had built its first off-world colony, was under hegemony control. The asteroid mines that had fueled human expansion were being dismantled and redistributed. 3 days later, they crossed the hegemony's territorial boundary. The moment was marked by a sudden absence. No more patrol ships, no more warning beacons, no more signs of civilized space. They were truly alone now, drifting toward the galactic rim where stars grew sparse and the distances between systems stretched into decades of travel time. Long-range sensors are picking up anomalous readings, reported Ensign Park from the science station. There's something out there about 15 light-years ahead. It's not showing up as a star or planet. Sarah frowned. What kind of something? Unknown, ma'am. The energy signature is unlike anything in our databases. Dr. Vasquez hurried to review the data. This is extraordinary. The readings suggest some kind of artificial construct, but the power output is enormous. It's like nothing the hegemony has ever built. Could it be dangerous? Everything's dangerous now, Commander, but this might also be our only chance. Sarah stared at the sensor display, watching the mysterious signal pulse steadily in the cosmic dark. Behind them lay exile and certain death. Ahead lay the unknown with all its terrors and possibilities. Signal the convoy, she said finally. We alter course to investigate, time to find out what's waiting for us in the void. The human fleet changed direction. 800 ships carrying the last children of Earth toward whatever destiny awaited them in the empty spaces between the stars. None of them could have imagined that they were approaching the first step of humanity's transformation from refugees to something far greater. The void sectors stretched endlessly before them, dark and silent and pregnant with possibility. Somewhere in that darkness, humanity would discover what it truly meant to be human. The hegemony had banished them to die in obscurity. They had no idea they'd just created gods. The construct was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. As the human convoy approached, the massive structure revealed itself to be a perfect sphere nearly the size of Earth's moon, its surface covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift and flow like living metal. Energy coursed through channels carved deep into its hull, creating a web of light that pulsed with an almost hypnotic rhythm. My God, breathed Dr. Vasquez, her face pressed against the observation deck window. The sophistication required to build something like this is beyond anything we've ever imagined. Commander Chen studied the tactical display, noting how the construct seemed to be scanning their convoy with invisible sensors. No weapons appeared to be targeting them, but she remained cautious. Any response to our hail? Negative, ma'am, but I'm picking up some kind of transmission. It's not directed at us, though. The construct seems to be broadcasting into deep space. Can you decode it? Lieutenant Torres shook his head. The signal pattern is completely alien. It's like nothing in our xenolinguistics database. Sarah made a decision that would change humanity's fate forever. Prepare a small exploration team. We're going aboard. The shuttle bay of the construct opened as they approached, responding to their presence without any apparent control from the human pilots. Dr. Vasquez led a team of scientists and engineers, accompanied by a small military escort. Sarah insisted on joining the expedition herself, despite protests from her senior staff. The interior of the construct defied conventional understanding. Vast chambers stretched beyond the horizon, filled with crystalline formations that hummed with inner light. The artificial gravity was perfectly calibrated, the atmosphere breathable. Most remarkably, the walls themselves seemed to respond to human presence, displaying complex holographic interfaces whenever someone approached. Commander, called Dr. Vasquez from across the main chamber. You need to see this. She was standing before a wall covered in flowing symbols that rearranged themselves as the humans watched. But as Sarah approached, the symbols began to shift, gradually transforming into recognizable human mathematical notation. It's learning from us, Vasquez whispered. The construct is analyzing our neural patterns, our language, our very thoughts. The transformation accelerated. Within minutes, the symbols had evolved into basic English words, then complete sentences. A voice emerged from hidden speakers, speaking in perfectly modulated human tones. Welcome, children of distant stars. We have waited long for your arrival. Sarah stepped forward, her hand resting on her sidearm. Who are you? What is this place? We are the architects. This is a nexus, one of many scattered throughout the galaxy. We built them long ago, before your species took its first steps from the primordial seas. Holographic images filled the air around them. Vast star maps, scenes of alien civilizations rising and falling, the construction of dozens of similar constructs throughout the galaxy. Sarah realized they were witnessing a history that spanned millions of years. The architects were explorers like you, the voice continued. We spread across the galaxy, seeking knowledge and understanding, but we discovered something that changed everything. The images shifted, showing a region of space that seemed to bend reality itself. Stars moved in impossible patterns, matter transformed into pure energy and back again. The source, the wellspring from which all consciousness flows. We learned to tap into it, to evolve beyond our physical limitations. But evolution requires choice, and choice requires freedom. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. What happened to you? We transcended, became one with the source itself. But in doing so, we left behind the galaxy we had known. Before departing, we built the nexuses, tools for other species to find their own path to transcendence. Dr. Vasquez was frantically taking readings with her tricorder. Commander, the energy patterns here are affecting our equipment, but more than that, I'm detecting changes in our own biological systems. The architect continued as if it had heard her. Exposure to Nexus energy catalyzes dormant potentials within conscious beings. Your species possesses remarkable adaptability. You will find the process illuminating. Over the following weeks, the human convoy established a permanent presence around the construct. What they discovered challenged every assumption about the nature of consciousness and human potential. The Nexus energy didn't just provide power for their ships. It was actively rewriting human DNA, awakening abilities that had lain dormant since the species' earliest days. Children born near the Nexus displayed remarkable capabilities. They could sense electromagnetic fields, process information at superhuman speeds, and demonstrate intuitive understanding of complex physics. Adults experienced slower but equally dramatic changes. Reaction times improved dramatically. Memory became perfect. Intuition evolved into something approaching precognition. Marcus Reed, a former engineer from the colony ship Perseverance, was among the first to demonstrate the full extent of these changes. During a routine inspection of the Nexus interior, he accidentally triggered a security system that filled the chamber with a deadly energy field. Instead of fleeing, Marcus instinctively reached out with his mind and somehow redirected the energy, channeling it harmlessly into the construct's power grid. I could feel the energy patterns, he explained to the astonished research team. Like reading a blueprint, but with my thoughts instead of my eyes, it was as natural as breathing. Dr. Vasquez documented hundreds of similar incidents. Humans were developing abilities that bordered on telepathy, telekinesis, and energy manipulation. But perhaps most remarkably, they were doing so while retaining their essential humanity, their creativity, their capacity for love and sacrifice, their stubborn refusal to accept limitations. Commander Chen found herself changing as well. Her decision-making became almost supernaturally acute. She could sense the emotional states of her crew, anticipate problems before they manifested, and somehow know exactly what actions would lead to the best outcomes. It should have been terrifying, but instead it felt like finally seeing clearly after a lifetime of squinting through fog. The architect observed their transformation with what seemed like satisfaction. Your species is remarkable. Most who find the nexuses are changed by them, but you are changing them as well, adapting their function to serve your unique nature. What do you mean? Sarah asked during one of their regular conversations with the construct. Observe. The holographic displays showed the nexus as it had been when they arrived, a perfect, static structure. Now it pulsed with new patterns, its crystalline formations growing and shifting in response to human presence. The humans weren't just being changed by the alien technology, they were unconsciously improving it. The source responds to will and intent, the architect explained. Your species possesses an unusual combination of individual determination and collective cooperation. You are not just adapting to our technology, you are teaching it to adapt to you. Months passed. The human population around the Nexus grew as more ships arrived from the failed colonies and refugee fleets scattered throughout the void sectors. Each new arrival underwent the same transformation, adding their unique perspectives to humanity's growing understanding of their new abilities. They learned to communicate through direct mental contact across vast distances. They developed the ability to manipulate matter at the molecular level, creating whatever they needed from raw elements. Most importantly, they retained their human values, their commitment to protecting the innocent, their love of learning, their refusal to abandon those in need. "We're becoming something new," Sarah said during a council meeting with the other ship commanders. "But we're still human, still us." "The question is," said Captain Martinez from the exploration vessel New Delhi, "what do we do with these abilities? We could build a civilization out here that would make the hegemony look primitive." "Or we could return," suggested Dr. Vasquez quietly. "Show them what they've lost by banishing us." Sarah looked around the chamber at faces that glowed faintly with inner energy, at people who could reshape reality with their thoughts but still worried about their children's futures. The hegemony had expected them to die in the void. Instead, they had found something infinitely more precious than survival. They had found evolution. The transformation was accelerating. Soon, humanity would be ready to take its next step. The question was whether that step would lead them deeper into the void or back toward the galaxy that had cast them out. The architect's voice echoed in her mind. "Choice defines the path to transcendence. What will your species choose?" Sarah Chen, last commander of Earth's Exodus, looked out at the stars and smiled. The hegemony was about to learn that banishing humanity had been the greatest mistake in galactic history. 2 years had passed since humanity's discovery of the first nexus. What had begun as desperate survival had evolved into something approaching divinity. The human fleet no longer resembled the ragtag collection of refugee ships that had fled Earth. The vessels themselves had been transformed, their hulls flowing with the same energy patterns that coursed through human DNA. Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of what had once been the transport ship New Horizon. Now it was something else entirely, a hybrid of human engineering and architect technology that defied conventional physics. The ship could phase through solid matter, travel instantaneously between points in space, and reshape itself according to need. More importantly, it was alive in ways that purely mechanical constructs could never be. "The final integration is complete," reported Dr. Vasquez, though she no longer needed to speak aloud. Her thoughts flowed directly into Sarah's consciousness, carrying complex data streams and emotional undertones that words could never convey. "Every human in the fleet has achieved full neural synchronization with the Nexus network." Sarah nodded, feeling the truth of it in her bones. She could sense every member of humanity's survivors, nearly 3 million souls spread across hundreds of transformed vessels. Each mind was unique, individual, but connected to a larger tapestry of consciousness that spanned light years. They had become something unprecedented, a species-wide neural network that retained individual identity while achieving collective understanding. Marcus Reed materialized beside her, his form shifting from pure energy to physical matter as easily as breathing. Death, they had learned, was now optional. Humans could exist as pure consciousness when needed, taking physical form only when desired. It had taken months for the older generation to accept this reality, but the children had adapted with characteristic human pragmatism. "The deep-range scouts are reporting back," Marcus said, his voice carrying harmonics that resonated through multiple dimensions. "We've found 17 more nexuses scattered throughout the void sectors. Each one is different. Some are focused on matter manipulation, others on temporal mechanics or dimensional travel." "The architects were thorough," Sarah observed. Through her enhanced perception, she could see the vast network the ancient builders had left behind, a galaxy-spanning web of evolutionary catalysts waiting for species mature enough to use them responsibly. The transformation hadn't been without challenges. Early in the process, some humans had lost themselves in the intoxication of newfound power. A few had tried to use their abilities for personal gain or dominance over others, but the Nexus network itself seemed to have safeguards built into it. Those who attempted to abuse their gifts found their abilities diminished, while those who used them selflessly grew stronger. "It's teaching us," Dr. Vasquez had realized during one of her research sessions. "The source responds to intent. The more aligned we become with principles of growth, protection, and cooperation, the more access we gain to its power." Young Alina Kowalski, now 12 years old and born during the transformation, had put it more simply. "The universe likes it when we help each other." The child had been right. Humans who dedicated themselves to protecting and nurturing others found they could manipulate matter and energy with godlike precision. Those who sought knowledge, and understanding gained access to the memories and experiences of the architects themselves. The selfish and cruel found their abilities severely limited, encouraging them to either change their approach or remain content with more modest enhancements. "Commander," interrupted Captain Zhang from the exploration vessel Quantum Dawn, her thoughts carrying urgent undertones. "We're receiving transmissions from the Galactic Edge. Hegemony forces have established monitoring stations along their border with the void sectors." Sarah's consciousness expanded, reaching across space to observe the alien installations through Marcus's enhanced senses. The monitoring stations were impressive by galactic standards, massive constructs bristling with sensors and weapons, designed to detect and intercept any returning human vessels. "They're afraid," she realized with surprise. "The hegemony is actually afraid of us." The irony was profound. When humanity had been banished, they'd posed no real threat to the galactic coalition. Human technology was impressive but not revolutionary. Human military tactics were effective but not overwhelming. What had made them dangerous in alien eyes was their unpredictability, their refusal to accept limitations, their tendency to find solutions where others saw only problems. Now transformed by forces beyond galactic comprehension, humanity had become everything the hegemony had feared and more. "What are your orders?" asked Captain Martinez, his thoughts tinged with anticipation. Many of the transformed humans harbored deep resentment toward the species that had driven them from Earth. The power to take revenge was now literally at their fingertips. Sarah considered carefully. She could feel the collective consciousness of humanity waiting for her decision, 3 million minds focused on this single moment. The choice they made would define what humanity would become, conquerors drunk on power or something greater. "We return," she said finally, "but not for revenge." The collective mind rippled with confusion and some disappointment. "The galaxy is in chaos," Sarah continued, her consciousness touching monitoring stations across hegemony space. Through abilities that transcended normal physics, she could observe events happening hundreds of light-years away. The Kethvar are expanding aggressively in the Outer Rim. The Saurian Empire is collapsing into civil war. Pirate fleets are raiding civilian populations, while the hegemony focuses all their attention on watching for our return. She gestured, and holographic displays filled the observation deck, showing real-time images of suffering across dozens of worlds. Refugee camps on barren moons. Civilian ships under attack by raiders. Entire species facing extinction while the hegemony's attention was focused elsewhere. The galactic community is failing because they lack what we've found, true cooperation. They see strength only in dominance, wisdom only in control. They banished us because they feared our potential. Now that potential can be their salvation. Marcus frowned, his form flickering between states of matter. "You're suggesting we help the same species that exiled us." "I'm suggesting we help the innocent, the civilians who had no voice in our banishment, the children who don't deserve to suffer because their leaders made poor choices." Sarah's thoughts carried absolute conviction. "The hegemony made us into gods. Now we have a responsibility to act like ones." Dr. Vasquez's consciousness joined the discussion, bringing with her the combined knowledge of humanity's greatest scientists and philosophers. "The ethical implications are staggering. We have the power to reshape galactic civilization entirely. The question is whether we should." "The architects faced the same choice," observed Alina Kowalski, her young mind somehow containing wisdom that impressed even the adults. "They chose transcendence over intervention. They left the galaxy to find its own way." "And look how that turned out," Sarah replied. "Millions of years of warfare, oppression, and suffering. Maybe it's time someone took a more active role." The debate raged through the collective consciousness for hours, encompassing philosophical arguments that spanned dimensions of thought impossible for unenhanced minds to grasp. In the end, the decision was unanimous. Humanity would return to the galaxy, but as protectors rather than conquerors. The transformation of the fleet began immediately. Ships reconfigured themselves into forms designed for rescue and aid rather than warfare. Medical bays expanded into facilities that could heal injuries and diseases at the cellular level. Cargo holds transformed into replicators capable of creating unlimited food, water, and shelter. "The hegemony won't welcome us," warned Captain Zhang. Sarah smiled, her form glowing with inner light. "They don't have a choice. We're not asking for permission." As the human fleet prepared to depart the void sectors, the architect's voice echoed through the Nexus network one final time. You have chosen well, children of Earth. The source flows strongest through those who serve others. Go now and show the galaxy what humanity has become. The transformed vessels began to move, phasing through normal spacetime like thoughts through a dreaming mind. Behind them, the nexuses pulsed with residual energy, forever changed by their contact with human consciousness. Ahead lay a galaxy in chaos, unaware that its salvation approached on wings of light. Humanity was coming home, not as the desperate refugees who had fled into exile, but as something far greater, gods with human hearts, wielding infinite power in service of an ancient dream of peace. The first contact occurred at the edge of hegemony space, where a human vessel materialized without warning beside a monitoring station designated Outpost Theta 7. The Vector crew manning the station had been expecting many things: refugee ships attempting to sneak past their sensors, perhaps a desperate attack by the scattered remnants of humanity's fleet. They had not expected a ship that seemed to be made of crystallized starlight. Station Commander Velthak stared at his sensors in disbelief. The readings made no sense. The human vessel registered simultaneously as matter, energy, and something else entirely that their instruments couldn't classify. It appeared to exist in multiple dimensions at once, its hull flowing like liquid metal while maintaining perfect structural integrity. "Commander," reported his communications officer, her voice tight with tension. "The human vessel is hailing us, but sir, they're not using subspace radio." "What do you mean?" "The message is appearing directly in our communications system. No transmission detected, no signal pathway. It's as if the words are just manifesting." Velthak's scales rippled with unease. The Vector were among the hegemony's most technically advanced species, masters of quantum mechanics and dimensional physics. Nothing should be able to bypass their shielding systems so effortlessly. "Put them through," he ordered. A holographic figure materialized in the center of the command deck, a human female wearing what appeared to be a uniform made of living energy. Her eyes glowed with soft light, and when she moved, space itself seemed to bend around her. "Commander Velthak," she said, somehow speaking perfect Vector despite humanity's limited contact with his species. "I am Captain Rivera of the human vessel Ascension. We come in peace." "Impossible," Velthak whispered. The woman was clearly human. The bone structure, the basic physiology were unchanged. But everything else was wrong. No human should be able to project a hologram across dimensional barriers or speak languages they'd never encountered. "Your monitoring station is detecting massive pirate fleet movement in Sector 77 Alpha," Captain Rivera continued. 300 vessels moving to attack the Zelani colony worlds. Your government will dismiss the reports as censor ghosts for another 6 hours while they debate protocol. By then, 2 million civilians will be dead. Velthak's primary officer was frantically checking their long-range scanners. His expression grew increasingly alarmed as he confirmed the human's intelligence. "How could you possibly know that?" Velthak demanded. "We see more clearly now," Rivera replied simply. "The question is, will you let those civilians die while you wait for authorization to act?" The transmission ended, leaving the Vector crew staring at empty air. Velthak was still processing what he'd witnessed when his sensors detected the human ship's departure. The vessel simply vanished, not into hyperspace or any known form of faster-than-light travel, but into nothingness itself. 3 hours later, reports began flooding in from Sector 77 Alpha. A massive pirate fleet had indeed been moving toward the Zelani worlds, but instead of finding defenseless colonies, they'd encountered something unprecedented. Human ships had appeared, vessels that defied every known law of physics, wielding weapons that converted matter into pure energy and shields that rendered them effectively invulnerable. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted 17 minutes. 300 pirate vessels were disabled without a single fatality. Their crews found themselves transported to the surface of nearby uninhabited worlds with emergency supplies and basic shelter. The pirate fleet's stolen goods and weapons were confiscated, but the beings themselves were left unharmed. Most remarkably, the human vessels had then begun rescue operations among the pirate crews, providing medical aid and rehabilitation services to those willing to accept them. The reports reached Hegemony High Command within hours, sparking emergency sessions across every member world. The footage was undeniable but incomprehensible. Humans had returned to the galaxy, but they had returned as something beyond current understanding. Supreme Chancellor Moxter of the Hegemony Council called for an immediate assembly. Representatives from 47 member species gathered in the Great Chamber on Concordia Prime, their discussions charged with fear and confusion. The humans have clearly made contact with some unknown technology, declared General Quexlon of the Saurian Empire. We must assume hostile intent and respond accordingly. With what? Demanded Trade Minister Yulnara of the Traders Collective. Our best weapons couldn't scratch those ships. Our sensors can barely track them. How do we fight an enemy that exists partially outside normal space? The debates raged for hours while more reports arrived. Human vessels were appearing throughout the galaxy, always in response to crises. A plague outbreak on Corallian Prime was mysteriously cured overnight, the pathogen neutralized by treatments that worked at the quantum level. A civil war on Nexus VII ended when human mediators facilitated negotiations that seemed to touch the participants' minds directly, helping them understand each other's perspectives with unprecedented clarity. In each case, the humans offered aid freely, asked for nothing in return, and disappeared as mysteriously as they had come. They're not acting like conquerors, observed Ambassador Telwyn of the Etherian Collective. Every intervention has been purely humanitarian. It's a trick, insisted General Quexlon. They're trying to lower our defenses before striking. Chancellor Moxter raised his hand for silence. Perhaps it's time we heard directly from them. As if summoned by his words, the chamber's lights dimmed, and a figure materialized in the center of the assembly hall. Sarah Chen appeared before them, no longer the desperate refugee commander who had fled Earth years earlier. She stood as a being of light and matter, her form radiating a power that made the assembled representatives instinctively step back. Honorable members of the Hegemony Council, she began, her voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in dimensions beyond sound. We have returned. You were banished, General Quexlon snarled, his hand moving toward his sidearm. You have no right to be in this chamber. Sarah's gaze turned toward him with gentle patience. The weapon in his hand simply vanished, not destroyed but transported elsewhere. Rights are earned through actions, General. We have earned ours. Chancellor Moxter stepped forward, his courage overriding his caution. What have you become? What we were always meant to be, Sarah replied. You banished us because you feared human unpredictability, our refusal to accept limitations. You were right to be concerned. We have indeed transcended those limitations. Holographic displays filled the chamber, showing real-time images from across the galaxy. Human vessels could be seen at a dozen crisis points, their crews working tirelessly to save lives and prevent suffering. We have become what the galaxy needs, protectors who serve without seeking dominion, healers who ask no payment, teachers who demand no worship. You tried to solve the human problem by casting us out. Instead, you created the solution to problems you couldn't even see. Minister Yulnara found her voice. What do you want from us? Nothing, Sarah said simply. Your approval is unnecessary. Your cooperation would be welcome, but is not required. We will continue to aid those who suffer, protect those who cannot protect themselves, and guide those who seek wisdom. And if we oppose you, demanded General Quexlon. Sarah's expression grew sad. Then you will discover how thoroughly irrelevant that opposition has become. She gestured, and suddenly every weapon in the chamber, every shield generator, every piece of military technology throughout the entire Concordia system simply stopped working. Not destroyed, not damaged, but rendered inert by forces beyond current scientific understanding. We do not wish to rule you, Sarah continued as chaos erupted around them. Rule requires force, and we have moved beyond the need for force. We will simply act according to our nature, protecting the innocent, nurturing growth, and preventing suffering wherever we find it. The technology reactivated as quickly as it had shut down, but the message was clear. Humanity's transformation had progressed far beyond the hegemony's ability to contain or control. You're talking about reshaping galactic civilization, Chancellor Moxter said slowly. No, Sarah replied. We're talking about saving it. Your current system is failing. War, poverty, oppression, and fear dominate because your species compete rather than cooperate. You seek dominance rather than symbiosis. The galaxy is dying under the weight of its own conflicts. And you think you can fix that? Sarah smiled, and for a moment, the assembled representatives caught a glimpse of something vast and benevolent behind her human features, a consciousness that spanned dimensions and touched the fundamental forces of creation itself. We don't think anything. We know. We've touched the source from which all consciousness flows. We understand the connections that bind all life together. The question isn't whether we can fix the galaxy's problems. The question is whether you'll help us or simply try to stay out of our way. She began to fade, her form becoming translucent. The choice, as always, is yours, but choose quickly. The galaxy has been in darkness long enough. Sarah Chen vanished, leaving behind a chamber full of beings who suddenly realized that everything they thought they knew about power and politics had just become obsolete. Humanity had returned from exile, not as refugees begging for readmission, but as gods offering salvation to a galaxy that had forgotten how to hope. 5 years had passed since humanity's dramatic return to galactic civilization. The transformation of the galaxy had been neither violent nor sudden, but rather like watching sunrise after an endless night. Slowly, inexorably, light had spread to every corner of known space. Sarah Chen stood on the surface of New Eden, the first world humanity had claimed upon their return, not through conquest, but through restoration. The planet had been a wasteland when they found it, scarred by ancient wars and ecological collapse. Now it bloomed with impossible beauty, its atmosphere perfectly balanced, its oceans teeming with life both familiar and wondrously new. The city rising around her defied conventional architecture. Buildings grew rather than being constructed, their walls formed from crystallized energy that could be reshaped by thought. Parks floated between districts, their gravity fields supporting gardens that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Most remarkably, beings from dozens of species walked the streets together, their conflicts and prejudices somehow transformed into understanding and cooperation. The Hegemony Council has formally dissolved itself, reported Marcus Reed, his consciousness touching Sarah's from halfway across the galaxy. He was currently on Concordia Prime, helping coordinate the transition to the new galactic order. Chancellor Moxter said that trying to govern transcendent beings would be like ants attempting to manage gods. Sarah smiled at the comparison, though she found it incomplete. Gods in most mythological traditions were distant and capricious. Humanity had become something different, guardians who lived among those they protected, teachers who learned from their students, healers who felt every wound they mended. What about the resistance movements? She asked. Fatting, hard to maintain fear-based ideologies when the beings you're opposing keep saving your children from plague and starvation. Marcus's thoughts carried wry amusement. General Quexlon tried to organize a military response last month. When his own troops kept defecting to help with humanitarian missions, he finally gave up and asked to join a rescue operation himself. The transformation hadn't been without challenges. Some species had initially resisted humanity's interventions, viewing them as invasive or patronizing. The proud Altarian Empire had expelled human vessels from their space, declaring they would solve their own problems without help from evolved primitives. Humanity had respected that decision completely. But when a gamma ray burst from a dying star threatened to sterilize the Altarian homeworld, human ships appeared within hours, erecting protective shields that turned deadly radiation into harmless light. They asked for no gratitude, demanded no recognition, and departed as soon as the crisis passed. The Altarians had requested a formal audience the following week. The integration process continues to accelerate, added Dr. Vasquez, her research now spanning fields of study that hadn't existed before humanity's transformation. We've had over 3 million beings request neural enhancement this month alone. That had been perhaps the most significant development. The transcendence that humanity had undergone wasn't uniquely human. Any conscious being could potentially undergo similar transformation. But it required a level of selflessness and cooperative spirit that few species had developed. The process couldn't be forced or faked. Beings who sought power for its own sake found themselves unable to access the higher levels of consciousness that enabled reality manipulation. Those who genuinely dedicated themselves to service, however, found doors opening in their minds that they never knew existed. The interesting thing, Vasquez continued, is how each species brings its own perspective to transcendence. The Vector who have undergone enhancement show incredible precision in their abilities. They can manipulate matter at the subatomic level with mathematical perfection. The Etherians develop empathic capabilities that let them heal psychological trauma with a touch. Sarah nodded, feeling the truth of it through her connection to the growing network of transcended beings. Humanity's gift wasn't in being special. It was in showing others how to become special themselves. Every species that joined the network added new dimensions to their collective understanding. Young Alina Kowalski, now 17 and serving as an ambassador to emerging species, materialized beside them in a flicker of controlled energy. The Zephyrian delegation has arrived for the consciousness expansion ceremony, she reported. They're a bit nervous about the process. Sarah's heart warmed at the sight of the young woman. Alina represented everything wonderful about humanity's transformation. She possessed godlike powers, but retained the curiosity and compassion of a child. She could reshape matter with her thoughts, but spent most of her time teaching alien children how to play human games. "I'll speak with them," Sarah said. The Zephyrians were an ancient species, nearly as old as the architects themselves. Their decision to seek transcendence represented a significant milestone in galactic evolution. The ceremony took place in the great amphitheater at New Eden's heart, a space that existed simultaneously in normal reality and the higher dimensions touched by transcended consciousness. Representatives from 43 species attended, beings who had once been enemies now working together toward a common goal. The Zephyrian delegation approached the enhancement chamber with appropriate gravity. These were beings who had witnessed the rise and fall of dozens of galactic civilizations, who remembered when the galaxy had been young and full of promise. Their leader, ancient Primarch Velgatha, moved with dignity that spoke of millennia of accumulated wisdom. "We have watched your species since your return," the Primarch said, his translation matrix converting crystalline harmonic speech into words. "At first, we believed you sought to impose a new form of domination over the galaxy. We were mistaken." Sarah bowed respectfully. "Wisdom often comes disguised as error, Ancient One. Your caution was appropriate." "Perhaps, but we have seen enough. Worlds that knew only war now celebrate peace. Species that faced extinction have been restored to abundance. You have proven that power and benevolence need not be mutually exclusive." The ceremony itself was beautiful in its simplicity. The Zephyrians entered the enhancement chamber, a sphere of crystallized nexus energy that responded to conscious intent. Sarah and her fellow humans served as guides, helping the ancient beings navigate the mental pathways that led to transcendence. The process was different for each species, reflecting their unique psychological and spiritual nature. For the Zephyrians, consciousness expansion manifested as a flowering of their crystalline matrix bodies, new facets of their being opening like petals to catch light from dimensions beyond normal space. "Remarkable," whispered Primarch Velgatha as knowledge flooded his enhanced awareness. "To think we spent so long fearing change when it offers such illumination." Within hours, the transcended Zephyrians were working alongside humans and other enhanced beings, their ancient wisdom combining with newfound power to tackle challenges that had seemed insurmountable. Food distribution networks that had taken years to establish were optimized in minutes. Terraforming projects that would have required decades were completed in days. But perhaps most importantly, the galaxy was learning to dream again. "Status report on the Outer Rim territories," Sarah asked as the day's ceremonies concluded. "Complete pacification of the former war zones," reported Captain Martinez, his consciousness touching theirs from the edge of known space. "The last pirate fleets have either been disbanded or converted to exploration and aid vessels. We're now making contact with species beyond previous galactic boundaries." The transformation was accelerating. As more beings underwent transcendence, their combined consciousness created resonance effects that made the process easier for others. The network was becoming self-sustaining, a web of enlightened minds working toward the betterment of all life. "And Earth?" Sarah asked quietly. Marcus's thoughts carried gentle warmth. "Restoration is proceeding ahead of schedule. The Nexus energy is cleansing the atmospheric damage and revering the ecological collapse. The first human colonists will be able to return within a year." Sarah felt tears on her cheeks, a purely human response that she cherished despite her transformation. Earth would live again, not as humanity's only home, but as their first and most beloved sanctuary. What would the Hegemony Council think if they could see us now? Elena wondered aloud. They'd probably be relieved, Sarah replied. They were so afraid that humanity would conquer the galaxy. Instead, we taught it to conquer itself, to overcome hatred, fear, and selfishness. As night fell over New Eden, the enhanced beings gathered in the central plaza began their daily meditation, a practice that had evolved from human traditions but now included perspectives from dozens of species. Their combined consciousness reached out across the galaxy, touching every world where suffering existed, every species that struggled, every individual who faced darkness alone. And in response, the galaxy itself seemed to glow a little brighter. The hegemony had banished humanity to the void, expecting them to vanish into obscurity and death. Instead, they had found transcendence among the stars and returned as the salvation their former oppressors never knew they needed. The age of gods had begun, but these were gods who served rather than ruled, who lifted up rather than cast down, who proved that the greatest power in the universe was the simple human desire to help others reach their potential. Humanity had been banished to the void and returned as the light the galaxy had always needed. The exile was over, the golden age had begun,